Hey everybody, welcome into this Photoshop tutorial brought to you as always by tutvid.com. My name is Nathaniel Dodds, and today we're going to take a look at something that you're absolutely going to love. This is, it's a really cool effect, creating this pseudo 3D text in Photoshop on a path using the brush tool. It looks really impressive, and it's really kind of easy to do. As long as you do a couple little things, it's pretty easy to do. Included in this tutorial, there's going to be a link down in the description. I'm giving away a gradient pack that is going to be like sampling material galore. It doesn't make a lot of sense now because you don't understand how we're going to use these gradients. Well, maybe some of you do, but some of you don't know how we're going to use these gradient packs. I'm going to show you in a moment how we're going to use them, and you're going to absolutely love to have this resource. There's going to be it's a simple free download. You can go over to my website, download it, boom, just like that. You're going to have some amazing gradients that you can use. You can follow along with this tutorial. So without further ado, let's check out the effect and how we can create it. So you can see we've got these kind of 3D tubes that are just twisting and serpentining all over this document over a vibrant colored background. And yeah, it's just a really, really cool effect, and it's something that I think you're really going to like. So here's what we do. If you're following along, we're going to go File, New, and create a new document. I'm going to create a document 2560 by 1440 is perfect for us. Let's go ahead and choose Create. Now, right off the bat, I want to go ahead and hit this little half black, half white circle in the bottom of my Layers panel and choose Solid Color to add a solid color fill layer. And I like to work over a really dark, really saturated blue. Go a little darker than you think, because when it actually fills the background, it looks a little bit brighter. Hit OK. We can just double click our background layer, hit OK, and drag it down to the garbage. Wonderful. Now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and create what I'm going to call a sampler. This is where these gradients, the gradients that I was just talking about, this is where these come into play. Create a new layer, and we're going to name this layer Sampler, just like that. Grab your elliptical marquee tool, located right there. Hold down the Shift key and drag out a simple circle. It can be big, it can be small. I would recommend big enough that you can see kind of what's going on. Grab the gradient tool, the gradient tool, and I'm going to give you a bunch of gradients that kind of look like this. See, this one's pink, this one's yellow, blue, orange, and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll give you a couple others as well. But these are just simple two-color gradients. Let's go with the pink to begin. We've got a very hot pink to a very light pink. Hit OK. And I'm going to use the simple linear gradient. And let's just go, start here at the top, and drag straight down to the bottom, just like that. Light pink to dark, rich pink, great. Command or Control D to deselect. We've got a pink circle up on its own layer. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it will in a second. Create another new layer, and let's just name this 3D or something. I don't know. It can be whatever. And check this out. We're going to grab the brush tool. In fact, we're going to grab the mixer brush tool. And here from the mixer brush tool, let's just choose to clean the brush. And I am going to, from this drop down, we want to go with a dry heavy load. So that's going to make wetness 0%, right? Can you see that? Wet 0%, load 100%. That's pretty important. Equally important is from the brush drop down here. And actually, I'm just going to, from my drop down here, go back to our basic brushes so we're not distracted by these little hair brushes from an older tutorial. What we want to do is make sure that we have a nice size to the brush. 150 pixels will work here for this size document. But most importantly, I like to keep my hardness at 100%. It really helps sell this effect. If you go soft, it's just going to kind of make it look like the pipes that we're about to draw are, like you drew the pipes and then you hit them with a Gaussian blur. Doesn't look all that great. But maybe in some sense, or in some cases, you may want to use that. I don't know, whatever. We want to hover over this pink shape, hold down the Alt or Option key, and select and sample that. Now check this out. We're up on our own layer. I'm going to forewarn you. This is not going to work the way it is, but I want to show you something. So we're going to just go ahead and begin painting. Look at that. I'm just dragging this purple ball or the pink ball around, and when I let go, it sticks. Well, what's happening? If we look at the layer thumbnail, we can see we've got this big blue line. Let me just shut off both of these layers beneath. We've got this big blue line and a pink ball at the end of it. Not what we wanted. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to undo it again to get rid of that. What's happening is if we look up here at our little sample thumbnail, we are sampling the pink ball, but we're sampling all this blue junk around it as well. Why is that happening? Well, right here, because sample all layers is ticked on. So not only are we sampling the pink ball on our sampler layer, but we're sampling the colored background as well. There's a couple things we can do here. We can shut off sample all layers, but what that means is when we're up here in our 3D layer getting ready to paint, we have to select the sampler layer, and then we can sample the pink ball. You can see that. Look at that. It's only sampling the pink ball, and we've got transparency around it. And if we paint, we get this really, really cool effect. Now here's the problem. I always forget to go back up to my 3D layer, and I end up painting right on my sampler layer. I don't want that. So the way I prefer to work is leave sample all layers checked on. And when it comes time to sample a new color or a new gradient, I simply shut off my background layer. Then I can hold down Alt or Option. I can sample the pink. You can see I've got the pink. I'm still on the 3D layer. And then I can just come over here. I can even turn my my blue back on. And I can just go ahead and paint away. And I can paint whatever I want. I can just go in and start drawing and get really, really cool shapes that look super three-dimensional and very much like these squiggling, twisting tubes going all over my screen. So that's really, really cool. Now, before we go any further, I want to let you guys know, boom, I'm selling a course over on typeface.com all about how to retouch images in Photoshop. Maybe you're not a photographer, but there's a ton you will learn about Photoshop, even if you're not a photographer. And if you pick up that course, the link appeared up there in the corner, only for people watching on YouTube, I should mention. If you pick up that course, you're going to support what we do here at typeface.com. You're going to allow me to keep creating these tutorials, which is great. I love you. Thank you so much if you pick it up. Thousands of people have bought it already. And as far as I know, everybody's happy. I haven't returned a single one of them. I'll put it to you that way. So everybody, I think, is really, really happy with it. So go ahead. If you're interested, pick up a copy of that course. It really helps us out. If not, the tutorial's still free here. So let's jump back into it. In fact, I'm going to make my brush tool quite a bit bigger, my brush tip quite a bit bigger. Let's bring it up to like 300, right? And we paint, we're going to get a huge soft tube. Now, I have some pressure options turned on up here. I've got shape dynamics ticked on. I'm going to shut that off. And I was using my tablet, so I was getting some crazy effects there. But you can see, if I paint, I get this big, huge, lunken 3D looking tube moving across my screen. Now, just check this out real quick. If I shut these layers off, look at that. I'm still getting the dark blue around it. Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because, remember, we're sampling this area. When we actually took the sample, there was no blue background, but then we turned the blue background back on, and it's actively sampling that area. So if the blue background is on, if I can speak English, if the blue background is on, it's going to automatically sample some of that blue. So I'm going to shut that blue background off, and then I paint, and I get a nice clean graphic with no blue overspill or anything like that, and it looks really, really cool. All right, I'm going to shut that layer off. Let's explore some other ways we can use this. Now, let's go ahead and create another new layer here, and I'm going to name this 3D as well. I guess I really don't need to keep naming these layers. We know what's going on here. And I'm going to create a path using the pen tool. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, I'm going to create, something like this, right? Just some big old path. Hit the Enter Return key. There we go. Go to the Paths panel. There it is. I'm going to double-click on it and just choose to name it Path 1. That's going to lock it in and save it so we don't accidentally delete it later on. Now, remember, we're up on a new blank layer. I go back to Paths. I have that path selected. I can right-click on this and choose Stroke Path and choose from the drop-down menu to stroke it with the Mixer Brush tool. I don't want to simulate pressure. I'm going to stroke it with the Mixer Brush tool, hit OK, and check this out. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? Deselect the path by selecting anywhere out here. We've got this really cool shape where the Mixer Brush tool conformed to our path and gave us this really beautiful pink swath just swooshing across the screen with the greatest of ease. Now, something else we can do, something that I think you will really like, is let's create some additional samplers here on our sampler layer. Elliptical marquee tool once more. Let's hold down Shift, drag out a circle, grab the gradient tool, and let's just go with the yellow gradient since that's what we have next. With the yellow gradient, I'm going to put the highlight over here. So I'm going to click up here and drag across my circle that way, right? That really bright yellow is over to the left. Command or Control D to deselect. Let's create another circle down here. Let's make this one big. And I'm just making it big to show you that the circle can really be any size you want. Let's go with the blue, hit OK. And with the blue, how do we want to do the blue? Let's go with the highlight way over here with the blue. So we got bright blue over there, and we pull it back to dark blue on this side. Again, with the elliptical marquee tool, drag out another circle right around here. Great. Gradient tool. And let's go. I just have this fourth orange gradient here. I'll include some additional gradients. I'll make, 8 or 10 or something for the gradient pack I give you to download. And let's hit OK. And in this case, I'm going to choose the radial gradient just because we can. And I'm going to start right here with the highlight, and I'm going to pull it straight back across. And you can see if I hit Command or Control D, it's just a very different way that the gradient is being applied, and also a very different way our 3D tube would look if we sample this particular gradient. Let's go ahead here and create a new layer. I'm going to just name this layer W, because we're going to create the letter W. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do it with the pen tool, but We're going to do it with the Freeform Pen Tool. Have you ever used this tool before? The Freeform Pen Tool. Up here in the control bar, there is this little gear icon. Select that, and I want to set curve fit to 10 pixels. It's the maximum setting here in Photoshop, and what it's going to do is it's basically going to help smooth out our path as we draw it. Now, it really helps to have a Wacom tablet or some kind of graphics tablet because you can just write and draw with a much greater ease, and I'm going to just draw out a big fancy W. Kind of something like that. It's not at all perfect. I'm actually going to undo that. Let's redo that. There we go. Maybe something like that. And when I look at this, I can see, I'm going to zoom in on it a couple times, there's a couple flat points. See, flat, flat. In order to fix any flat points, you want to grab your direct selection tool, the white arrow right there. And you simply just click anywhere to deselect the path, and then select that path segment that's flat, grab a tangent handle, and I like to drag the tangent handle so it's straight across with the tangent handle right across from the anchor point. So both these tangent handles go through this anchor point. I want to make them, relatively straight, and that's going to let me know that that curve where those kind of run into each other, or that point where they run into each other, it's going to be a nice smooth flowing point. Same thing with this little tangent handle here. Boom. And look at that. We've made it nice and smooth around the top of our W. Let's do this here with this little flat point here. And you can see that the tangent handles are much tinier, but if we kind of follow that rule, it helps them just, I don't know, it just helps them look better. I don't know how to describe it. And you can go through and any of these points that aren't quite perfect, you can go in and tweak and adjust them and make them much, much nicer. I'm not going to take the time to do it here because I don't want to spend the entire tutorial tweaking a path. But just know, the smoother you make this path now, the better your effect will be when it is applied later on. So I can come here and just stretch this path this way a little bit. I can move this down or move this up. You can do all kinds of things to really just adjust the way that your letter W or whatever letter you draw out is going to look. And the more time you spend on it, like I said, the more time you spend on it, the better it's going to look in the end. All right, so with this path, first and foremost, we want to make sure we save it. So double click, path 2, that's fine. We can actually name it W if we want. Great. And I'm going to use the path selection tool, which is going to make sure we've selected the entire path, and just drag the path down to right over here. So it's kind of out in the middle of our working area. We're going to go layers. We're up on our new layer. Great. We've got our mixer brush tool. I'm going to shut off my background once again, and let's just go with the blue here. So I'm going to just make sure I've got a brush that's big enough to be covering the entire blue area. Hold down Alt or Option, select blue. You can see up here we do have our blue gradient selected. Beautiful. A brush that's 250 pixels around, probably going to be a little bit too big for the W, so let's right click and downsize it to maybe around 150, 160, something like that. That's a little more reasonable. Go back to paths, right click on the path, stroke width, you got it. Mixer brush tool, hit OK, and look at this beauty. Look at that. Go ahead and do its thing. We have this three-dimensional W now. Isn't that so cool? It's so cool. It's so easy to do. You just create the path. You've got your little color sampler, and boom, you create the letter. If we wanted to create another W, create a new layer, shut off the blue W, shut off our background, so we're sampling clean colors here. Let's just do like an orange W here, see what this looks like. Go back to paths, select the path W, right-click, stroke path, mixer brush tool, hit OK, and voila, we have an orange W as well. So very quickly, very easily, you can go in and create these rather complex, very three-dimensional looking letters. You can go with whole words or just regular old paths as you see fit or as your project calls for. One of the other things you can do once you've created letters or words in this sort of big hulking 3D way, I'm going to go back to the blue letter W, is you can create or add a drop shadow to it. So if I just go layer style, drop shadow, just add a huge drop shadow. Kind of what I have here is great. 30% opacity, angle of 90 degrees is great, distance and size of 200 apiece, and hit OK, and there's just a very big subtle drop shadow beneath this W. In fact, if I double click on my color fill layer and I make it a much lighter blue, maybe bring it over here like this, you can see that there's a big, just sort of super soft shadow underneath the letter, almost making it look like the three-dimensional letters popping up off the background, floating in midair. I don't know, it's an effect, it's a thing that you can try. I'm going to undo that because it's not necessarily what we're shooting for here. Now, one of the things that I want to show you is how to sort of hijack a typeface and create these 3D tube letters using a typeface. So I'm going to grab my type tool and I'm going to work with, you know what, let's go huge. Let's go with 600 point text right off the bat. And I've got my color set to white for the text so we can see it over this background. Let's go with the letter U. All right, so we've got the letter U. It's a nice simple letter. I'm going to move it right over here using my move tool. I want to right-click on this type layer and choose Create Work Path. What that's going to do is it's going to give us the work path outline of that letter. I'm going to go over to Paths. I'm going to double-click on my work path and name this U. And what I can do now is go back to my layers and just get rid of this text layer. I don't need it. I just want that path. Let's create a new layer here, and I'm going to name this layer U. What happens if I stroke this path with one of these colors? Well, let's shut off our background layer. Let's grab the mixer brush tool. Let's Alt or Option click. Let's go with yellow. I don't think we've done yellow yet, have we? All right, so we've got a 159 pixel brush. Let's go 175. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And let's just stroke this path. So there it is, the letter U. Right click, stroke path. What are we doing? Mixer brush tool. You got it. Hit OK. And it's going to be a convoluted mess. You can see it's kind of interesting looking, but it's also kind of a mess. Really, the interesting looking part are these two parts of the U, but down here it's just kind of janky and wonky and not at all what we want. How do we remedy this? Well, what I recommend and what I usually do for virtually any work paths that have to do with letters that I get from fonts is I go in and simplify the path, and I do that with the direct selection tool. Grab the direct selection tool, and in this case we're going to select all of the inner anchor points. So you can see the outer hollow anchor points, none of them are selected. The inner anchor points are all solid colored because they're all selected. Go ahead and hit the delete key, get rid of them. We have a nice, simple U path. If we stroke this path, right click, stroke path with the mixer brush tool, hit OK, we get a nice, simple, beautiful letter U. In fact, I think this would even look better if we made our mixer brush a little bit bigger. So instead of 375, let's go like, 250, maybe 300. I feel like I'm pushing it a little bit. Yeah, 300 might be a little too big. Let's go 250. Go back to paths, right click, stroke path, mixer brush tool, hit OK. And look at that, a nice fat, bulbous letter U. It looks so cool. And we've kind of hijacked a typeface and used the paths from that typeface to create a perfect letter U. Much different than our sort of freeform handwritten letter W or whatever letter you would write that way. So there's multiple ways to use this effect. Now, one last way that I want to show you this effect, I'm going to create a new layer here. And what we're going to do is you can take any one of these brushes. Let's go back with the pink again because it might be most noticeable. So let's go with the pink. Let's make our brush a little bit smaller, brush tips a little smaller. I'm just using my square bracket keys, by the way, to do that. Hold down Alt or Option, sample pink. You can see, sure enough, yep, we just have pink selected. Great. And what I want to do here is select my brush panel. It's going to open my brush panel, and I'm going to turn on Shape Dynamics. Now, I don't want to change anything here. I want that to be 0. I want angle jitter to be 0, roundness jitter 0, everything 0, nothing turned on. The only thing I want to change is under here on the Control drop-down menu. I want to turn on pen pressure, and I still want to make sure everything is set to 0. You can see what changed. It just kind of said, like, we're doing this pen pressure thing. Great. I'm going to close my brush panel. Now I'm going to go back to paths. I'm going to make sure I'm using a nice large brush, so I'm going to go a little bit bigger here, maybe like 300 or so. I'm going to select my letter U. I'm going to right-click. You know what? 300 is a little bit too big, right? So let's go back down to 250. I'm going to right-click on the letter U and choose Stroke Path. Now, here I'm going to tick on the simulated pressure option. So I'm going to tick that on, and I'm going to hit OK. And you're going to see what happens is we get this very interesting brush fading in and brush fading out, all the while applying this three-dimensional like sampled gradient to our brush. So it's a really interesting effect. It can do really, really interesting things for you. It's what I did over here for this letter 3. And, you know, like this letter 3 could be, if I just rotate it like this could be like horns on a ram. It could be a crazy letter 3. It could be something like, you know, I don't know, an athlete's rear end. I don't know. It could be anything. It could be all kinds of different things. And it just is a really precise way to apply this sort of fade in, fade out to a brush that you're painting. And when you mix it with the textures and gradients and colors that you can use with the mixer brush tool, man, it can be pretty stinking powerful. So I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you create anything that you think is cool using this technique, tag me on Instagram in that image. I would love to see it. My Instagram is @tutvid, Tutvid. Tag me. I'll go ahead. I'll like it. I'll comment on it. I'll interact with you, you know, as long as it looks pretty good and is interesting and stuff like that. But just if you create something that you think is cool, don't hesitate. Tag me. I would love to see it. Love seeing what you guys make. And I'm getting bombarded with stuff on Instagram. Well, kind of, sort of bombarded with stuff on Instagram. I really want to up my Instagram game a little bit more. But Tag me in anything that you create. I would absolutely love to see it. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you like this video, comment on it if you feel so inclined, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you never miss another video in the future for creating this 3D tube style text in Photoshop that is absolutely amazing and is going to make your friends say, how did you do that? That's it. Get it, got it, good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.